Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for tuning into the Chamber's webinar on what just happened in the general election. This is Tricia Swanson speaking. I'm the Vice President, Government Relations for the Chamber here. We also have John Steerhoff on the phone calling in from Annapolis. John is a partner at Venable. And for those of you that know, the Venable team does an incredible job strengthening the Chamber's advocacy at the state level. Can you say hi, John?
Hello. How are you all today?
Okay, so before we dive into the results from last night, I did want to highlight the work that the Chamber has done over the last year during our Election 2018 initiative. Over the last year, the Chamber gave our members incredible and unique access to state and local candidates who will now be our elected officials. On the flip side of that, too, is that these candidates and now soon to be electeds heard from our board members and member companies about what's on the mind of business leaders around our county, both pain points and proactive solutions to issues. The events that the Chamber held were Coffee with the Candidates. We had Board of Ed members, council members, and state delegation members. The county executive candidates, both in the Democrats in the primary election, all came and sat down with our board members in a speed dating forum. So it was different from what they were used to. They were used to kind of stoic talking points and debates with 30 seconds to answer a question. And we got feedback from not only our board members, but from the elected candidates to say, this was fantastic. It was much better to have a conversation than just stand up there and deliver talking points. So we had both the general election or the primary election candidates, all 6 of the Democrats, and then we had one during the general election where we had the Democrat unaffiliated and the Republican. But we also did the economic forum and the county executive debate that followed the forum at USG. And it was the Chamber and our business coalition partners' advocacy that the idea of economic development became the top issue during the campaign. For example, we saw the Washington Post structured their endorsements really around economic development. So to kick off today's webinar, I wanted to give the Chamber's president and CEO, Gigi Godwin, a few minutes.
Thanks, Tricia, and welcome everyone who has signed on for our second ever MCCC Advocacy webinar. 2018, with the election officially behind us, the MCCC Advocacy Team is hitting the ground running. Led by Tricia Swanson, our VP of Government Relations, we've expanded our lobbying efforts. We've always had an active advocacy program, but it's bigger and better than ever before, and I think the timing's pretty good on that. And as all of you know, we have a federal lobbyist, that's Madison Services, working on our federal government contracting initiatives, a state lobbying team, and we're so thrilled to have John Steerhoff on the phone, who leads the amazing Venable team for us. And we've had many years of working together, and we have since added a county lobbyist, Ashley Bagwell of Harris Jones. It's a great team. Well, as you know, while MCCC has been working hard on our Election 2018 initiative, we have also created a strong, proactive legislative and advocacy agenda, and we're already getting your recommendations. The door is open on that. We are continuing to update that, but we're ready to go. We are ready to hit the ground running with your help and your participation and your excellent guidance. And remember, as you've all heard me say, we are not D's or R's here at the Chamber. We are C for Commerce, and we're looking forward to working with our returning electeds in addition to the new faces we have at the county, state, and federal level. Thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in, and we're looking forward to what's next.
Thank you, Gigi. All right, who's ready to look at some numbers? The plan for today is to go over the countywide results, the statewide results, how these results relate to the bigger picture of our advocacy moving forward, what the next steps are that the Chamber is taking in our advocacy, and then we'll have a few minutes for any questions you all may have that come up throughout the presentation. So looking at the county executive race, Mark Elrich came away with a resounding win. The latest numbers show him at 64.3%. That's about 225,000 votes. Florine followed this win at 19.2%, 67,000 votes, and Ficker finished with 16.4%, 50,000 votes. This is a margin. This is a margin of win for Elrich that I don't think anyone was quite expecting. I think there were people that were guesstimating anywhere between 40 and 50% if it was going to be that high. So a win of 64.3% was much, much higher than what most people were projecting. Looking at the county council, I don't think the results of these races surprised anyone, but I did want to include them on these slides to highlight the 4 new members that we will have at the council. You'll see Gabe Albornoz, Will Jawando, Hans Reimers in italics there because he's returning, he's not new, and Evan Glass, they're coming in as our at-large members. And then Andrew Friedson in District 1 is replacing Roger Berlinger. And I think there are some great potentials here for partnerships. The Board of Education, this race was an interesting one for those following. Pat O'Neill and Judy Docca are the current incumbents, and for the first time they had really strong, formidable opponents going into the race. It wasn't necessarily that either one of them was going to be returning. However, they both will be coming back to the board. There are 2 new members on the Board of Education, Brenda Wolff and Karla Silvestre. They're replacing 2 individuals that are retiring. Brenda Wolff is a former principal and civil rights activist, and Karla Silvestre is a current MCPS parent and works at Montgomery College. So they'll be bringing different and unique perspectives to the board. I put the sheriff on here. For those of you following that race, the FOP union actually endorsed Popkin's opponent in the final days leading up to the election, but he still held a strong re-election number with 75.7% of the vote. And then all of our board members on the phone should be well versed with our ballot questions. They all passed. So the redistricting commission question will now allow for unaffiliated and recognized third party, either green or libertarian members on that commission. The second ballot question was changing the word all to changing the word 9 to the word all. To vote for a tax increase. In case there's a vacancy on the council, the vote can be all members versus 9 members. And then the final question dealt with council merit aides. And now, because of this passing, council members will be able to hire more than 1 aide outside of the merit system. So that's what I have at the county. I'm going to turn it over to John now for the state results.
Good afternoon, everybody. Let's start with the governor's race. The governor won by a vote of 56.2% to 42.7%, a surprising 13.5% margin. A lot of people were expecting, particularly in the final weeks of the campaign, that those margins were narrowing, but in fact, they likely got a little bit bigger. The high Democratic turnout across the state led to a lot of surprising victories in the local races that we'll get to shortly, where Hogan had short coattails. But this was a demonstration in these same Democratic districts where there was strong Democratic crossover voting, which led to his victory. This is only the first time a 2-term Republican has been elected since 1954, when Governor McKeldin won a second term. Governor Hogan was buttressed by a significant fundraising advantage. He raised, most recently reported, $19.2 million versus a $3.8 million campaign war chest for Ben Jealous. And as a result, the governor was able to focus on TV and social media. And this is in contrast specifically to 2014 when he used public financing to finance his campaign. The governor's strong support in Democratic jurisdictions buoyed his campaign. 44.5% support in Montgomery County, the first time a Republican candidate had exceeded 40% in the county since 1994. In Baltimore City, he received 31.8% of the vote, which was a 10% increase from 2014, a virtual tie in Charles County, and even in Prince George's County, Governor Hogan received 39.9% of the vote. Turning to the Senate, in addition to re-electing Hogan, one of the primary Republican goals this time was to take away the Democrats' veto-proof majority in the Senate of Maryland. Thus, the governors, you've heard maybe potentially the drive for 5 for Senate seats, needed to uphold a veto. However, the Republicans only picked up 1 of the 5 targeted seats, increasing their Senate membership from 14 to 15 votes. On the Lower Eastern Shore in District 38, Jim Mathias met his match in Republican delegate Mary Beth Carrozza, losing 53 to 46.9%. In District 42 in Baltimore County, Chris West defeated Robbie Leonard, but by a narrow margin, only 51.8 to 48.2%. Kathy Klossmeyer in District 8 in Baltimore County hung on by 50.6% to 49.3%, only 554 votes. This was a vulnerable seat, potentially a vulnerable seat, but Democrats ultimately also picked up a delegate seat in this district as well. In Frederick County, in District 3, it was rumored that Democrat Ron Young was going to have a hard time, but he easily beat Craig Giagrande by 57 to 43%. In Annapolis, in District 30, Sarah Elfreth held the Democratic seat, formerly held by John Astle, defeating former delegate Ron George 53 to 45%, a handed victory. In Carroll and Howard counties, Gail Bates, a Republican, lost to newcomer Katie Fry Hester by 154 votes. This is for sure going to go into a recount as we look at the provisional and absentee ballots over the coming 2 weeks. In District 34, Bob Castley topped former delegate Mary Delaney James by 399 votes in a rematch of the 2014 senatorial race. And in other districts where Republicans were bidding to win seat, Democrats won big. In District 32, Senator DeGrange's seat, Delegate Pam Beidel defeated Councilman John Grasso. In District 12, Delegate Lamb beat Joe Ho. And in District 28, formerly held by Senate Finance Committee Chairman Mac Middleton, Arthur Ellis, a CPA, beat businessman Bill Dotson. Turning to the House, Democrats also made significant gains in the House, increasing by at least 5 from 91 to 96, with possibly a 98 final number compared to 43 versus 50 for Republicans. So Democrats defeated 4 incumbents and picked up 1 open seat for certain, with a couple seats still in play. In Frederick, Ken Kerr ousted Delegate Bill Folden. In Baltimore County, in Kathy Klossmeyer's District 8, Harry Bahandri, a school administrator, former school administrator, and former Delegate Joe Boatler will join Eric Bromwell, and who defeated Joe Cluster, a current delegate. In Howard County, in 9B, former County Council woman Courtney Watson defeated Delegate Robert Flanagan, former Secretary of Transportation for the state. And in Southern Maryland, in District 29B, Democrat Brian Crosby, an Army Ranger, defeated Delegate Deb Ray. In Anne Arundel County, in 30A, an Education Foundation official, Alice Kane, won the open seat, joining Mike Bush in that district. In 42B, up in Baltimore County, Michelle Goyton was 300 votes ahead, most recently, of Tim Robinson, who ran for the Senate last time around against Jim Brochin. Nino Mangione, a radio executive, is leading in that district in current votes. And finally, in Harford County in 34B, Delegate Glenn Glass was 20 points behind Democrat Steve Johnson. Mary Ann Lasante finished first in that district. Turning to county executive races. In the county races, this was a great day for Democrats, demonstrating that Hogan truly had no coattails in this race. In Baltimore County, despite Hogan's overwhelming numbers, Johnny Olszewski unified Democrats and overpowered State Insurance Commissioner Al Redmer. In Anne Arundel County, Democrat Stuart Pittman, a horse farmer and political novice, defeated Steve Shue after one term, despite Hogan overwhelmingly beating Jealous in the county. And also in Howard County, where 57% of the voters supported Hogan, former council member Calvin Ball defeated Alan Kittleman, also after only one term. Ball is Howard County's first African-American county executive. Finally, in Frederick, Democrat Jan Gardner also won re-election over current Republican delegate Kathy Afzali. Excuse me. There were a couple ballot questions on Maryland's ballot. Both passed with little controversy, although probably neither are completely understood by the voters. The first was a voter registration amendment, which authorizes the General Assembly to create a system for eligible residents to show up at the polls, register, and cast a ballot to vote on Election Day. Delegate Resnick from Montgomery County championed the proposal and said earlier today that he planned to introduce legislation in 2019 to put same-day registration in place statewide. 15 other states in the District of Columbia allow this currently. Currently, Maryland does allow people to register or change their address during early voting. In the most recent early voting period, October 25th to November 1st, 3,733 people registered and voted on the same day. The second state ballot question in Maryland was the casino lockbox measure, the education lockbox. Probably the most controversial aspect of this was who was going to take credit for it, Governor Hogan or the General Assembly. The ballot initiative required the governor to dedicate gambling revenues, estimated to be about $500 million by 2022, to funding local public school systems on top of the current minimum funding requirements. In 2008, when slots-only casinos were approved by the voters in a constitutional amendment, gaming was certainly sold as a way to help fund schools, but in practice, the money has been used to meet existing requirements, not as in addition to those requirements. A state commission, which you're going to be hearing a lot about in the coming months, chaired by Britt Kerwin, may propose updating funding formulas to provide schools additional money. So what the casino lockbox measure does may be mute as that money may be used to meet those additional costs. I can stop there, I think, if there's any questions or thoughts.
Okay.
Tricia?
Yeah, so I think John did a good job looking at kind of the bigger picture. And one takeaway that I had looking at election night was how interesting it is that the split voting that happened across the state, the fact that Hogan would win or come close to winning a county, and then you would have an overwhelming Democratically elected county executive. So they're really interesting minds going into vote this time, which I think is interesting to pull out and look at what that means moving forward. And then in looking specifically at the county level, and I mentioned this, but I really do think that we have some strong potential partners going on to the council next term. Our team here has met with 3 of the 4 new council members. We're working to meet with the 4th here pretty soon. And we've had great conversations about not only their future goals and their plans, but also how the chamber can be of help to them. We've had a lot of, and we've also had multiple meetings and similar conversations with our county executive-elect, Mark Elrich. And we want to continue to be a trusted resource for all of our electeds. And this ties directly into our next steps. To be a trusted resource, we want to be proactive in bringing ideas to our elected officials. I would love for their first interactions with us to be us giving them ideas that they can run with and that we can help support them carry across the finish line. But these ideas will come out of our 3 committees we have here at the Chamber: the Land Use and Infrastructure Committee, Business Climate Committee, and Talent and Workforce. We're also hosting meetings that we're going to call solution groups that really deep dive on particular issues. And these are issues that not only are coming from our board members, but issues that we see coming on the horizon. And we want to develop and be proactive or develop a strategy to play defense prior to their introduction. Things we're already looking at and having conversations about include how Montgomery County differs from surrounding counties and states as it relates to permitting or various requirements on new or renovated buildings. We also just recently heard about some barriers surrounding the state's R&D tax credits that we're going to deep dive into and explore more. And these are just a few examples. So if you haven't already, please reach out to me and get involved, even if it's just you bringing an issue to my attention and I can do the work, or if you want to help me kind of research and deep dive, I would love that as well. I'm really excited to be leading our advocacy team, especially having the support of Venable and John Searhoff and his team and our local and federal lobbyists as well. And unless there's anything else that John wanted to add, I think we can close and open it up to any questions.
I think that the one thing on my side, Tricia, is that, kind of the next step for all of these, new members is getting committee assignments. But I guess from a big picture perspective, today begins the election for 2020 and also 2022. In the governor's race, looking forward, the two biggest, potential candidates, Kittleman and Shue, are out, leaving kind of Barry Glassman in Harford County, who won overwhelmingly as, a potential candidate in 2022. And two new Ds, Johnny Olszewski and Calvin Ball, that will be, certainly eyeing the governor's seat when we look 4 years down the road. With respect to Congress, Elijah Cummings' seat is rumored to become vacant at the end of this term, and Talmadge Branch, Marilyn Mosby, both eyeing that seat in Baltimore City. And in the Senate, Chris Van Hollen's seat comes up in 2022. Ben Cardin's seat comes up in 2024, and certainly Governor Hogan will be looking at both of those seats. So again, there's a lot of excitement that's just begun.
John, we have a question on here about Hogan's administration. Do you think there's going to be a lot of turnover or new faces, specifically kind of the agencies that we work with, like Department of Commerce or Transportation? Are you hearing about any big changes in his administration?
I'm absolutely hearing about potential changes. None of them will be announced for, the next month or so. But I think that, there's certainly going to be shakeups within the Department of Commerce. We're anticipating within the Department of Natural Resources, and possibly even among his own, staff. I mean, his current chief of staff, Matt Clark, is rumored not to be staying, past the inauguration. And it wouldn't surprise me that, somebody who, who's an insider now will be appointed to that position. So there's a lot of potential stuff coming. I think that we'll start hearing about it in early January.
And is that normal for a second-term governor? I mean, I know we can't really compare it to a second-term Republican governor. We'd have to go back 60-plus years. But do we see that in O'Malley's second term, a lot of shakeups?
I think you see it in everybody. I think that, again, some people just commit to 4 years. Some people, kind of, again, they wear their welcome out sooner than others. We've also been hearing about the Secretary of Transportation and whether he will continue to stay in the upcoming term, Secretary Ron. So, again, I don't think that's unusual at all. And look, as we move through this administration, somewhere in kind of year 2 and 3, you'll start to see, kind of people move out to the private sector, before, they're forced to by, an election that a Republican may or may not win. It's been unusual to have a 2-term, Republican governor. I don't know if we can look forward to, another, individual like that or not. So there'll be people that'll be kind of, reading the tea leaves and making decisions about moving on.
So we just got another question, kind of on a similar note, but so you mentioned that Stuart Pittman in Anne Arundel County just won the county executive race, and he, as a horse farmer and a political novice, do you think the result and support of Hogan and the Stuart Pittman now indicates that Marylanders reflect the support, the kind of national support for the non-politician kind of candidate?
I just said that only because I didn't have a whole lot to fill in there. I mean, that was a race not unlike Howard County. There was a lot about development, and that became, kind of part of the hue and cry that Steve Shue was too strong a development county executive, and that in some areas of the county there was, some very strong pushback against that. When you look across the state, you know, kind of the whole outsider versus insider, you really didn't see that type of, you know, other than in this one case, you know, somebody who's kind of more of a, would be viewed as an outsider. Even in places like, you know, Baltimore County, you know, Johnny Olszewski had been out of office for 4 years, but had formerly been in the House of Delegates, and his dad was a longtime member of the Baltimore County Council. So there's speculation that, you know, some, you know, what's old is new in Baltimore County.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, unless there are any other questions, we are right at about our 30 minutes that we wanted to stay under. I hope everyone enjoyed this. I do want to make a final pitch. Our Business Awards dinner is 6 days away. It's on Tuesday, so make sure you register. We have a link on our homepage, and we'll be sending the email of this PowerPoint, and I'll be sure to include a link in that email for you to register for the Business Awards dinner. So thanks to everyone who tuned in, and I hope you found this helpful, and enjoy the rest of your Wednesday.
Thanks, everybody.